Akron Police Department or outside agencies into the use of deadly force by an officer. Our values. Our decisions and actions are motivated by our love for Akron and our desire for all to feel safe in the community. We value unity in voice and action. We respect each other and those we serve. We seek to build relationships of trust, and we seek to always conduct ourselves with integrity. We listen to understand, learn, and lead. We strive to be inclusive of all stakeholders' voices. We value change at a system level. We hold ourselves accountable for our actions and deeds, and we hold our partners and those we serve accountable for their actions and deeds as well. This time we'll move on to item 5 on our agenda, and that's our public comment. Ms. Anaskevich.
Lee Holden, please.
Hey, good evening. My name is Leah Holden. When we learned about the grand jury's no-bill decision in the Jasmine Tucker police shooting, Akron NAACP President Judy Hill spoke briefly with reporters about the role of the Citizens Police Oversight Board in this matter. And at the October 6th press conference, she expanded on those comments. Today, I want to reaffirm what President Hill said and look ahead. The grand jury has done its work and been thanked by the mayor. The president of the Fraternal Order of Police has weighed in and pointed his finger at those he holds accountable without acknowledging that there is room for improvement in police policies and practices. Today, the NAACP reaffirms that we need change to ensure that we never face another moment like this one. That was the fundamental impulse that led to Issue 10 and the creation of this board. This is yet another moment to remind ourselves, in Dr. King's words, of the fierce urgency of now. He said, "This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off." And today we have not cooled off. We have work to do. Jasmine Tucker's family will turn to the courts, and the community will continue to petition city government for change. The Akron Police Department's internal affairs review process will determine whether the police officers' actions complied with policy. Unfortunately, the use of force policy is so loose, so deficient in guidance for officers that we know what to expect from that process. We are likely to have one more example of why we need a more specific use of force policy. The NAACP pledges to participate in the use of force policy review and revision that is just beginning, and to insist that safeguards be added to prevent avoidable harm to citizens. And we appeal to citizens of Akron to join us. The findings of the Akron Police Department's internal review, once complete, will come to the independent police auditor. He will consider all the evidence and issue a report that will surely include recommendations intended to improve the safety of both officers and citizens during encounters. Then his recommendations will go to the city administration for action. We know that the city, despite an agreement to respond to recommendations within 45 days, mostly misses that deadline and declines to use the auditor's recommendations to bring about timely change. Each month, we see numerous audits with overdue responses, and some that have been punted to the upcoming use of force policy review. We want more transparency from city administration, and we expect change, not foot dragging. We will continue to ask the mayor and the chief of police to provide timely, specific, and substantive responses to the auditor's meticulous and thorough reports. We ask citizens of Akron to join with us in calling for change. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holden. Next. No.
It's still not showing up on Zoom, so. I mean, on YouTube, but. And, oh yeah, so it's time for the auditor's report. Is it gonna work? Is it gonna work? Oh, it's time for the auditor's report.
Thank you so much for the public comments. We're going to move forward in our committee report out. I'm going to start first with Ms. Castle and the governance report.
Yeah, so we had a meeting last week, and we reviewed some different things. So we went back to that strategic plan that we worked on, quite a few ways back, just refocusing what the work of the governance committee is and looking at what that can look like as we onboard some of our new members, and going through as we get some of our committees back and active, with that leadership of some of our new members. So we had a great dialogue regarding that. One of the things that we were hoping to bring back, we tabled last meeting as a full board, was the analysis that Mr. Fennell, Auditor Fennell, had presented to us regarding the crowd control policy recommendation. So at this time, now that hopefully board members have had an opportunity to dive into those recommendations and that analysis of that crowd control policy documentation, we would like to motion the acceptance of the analysis presented by Auditor Fennell of the crowd control policy recommendations.
I'll take that as a motion. I'll second. Any further discussion? Are we ready to vote then? All right, we'll roll call vote. Anaskevich,
Yes.
Castle,
Yes.
Krabs,
Yes.
Hawkins,
Yes.
Weems. Yes. Boyd is yes. Motion passes.
And the other item that we would like to discuss tonight, we did revisit the annual report. So we did discuss what that can look like moving forward. Again, that's something that we anticipate to run through governance in tandem with the committee structure. So we are hoping to get more information, and once we have some clarification on committee leads, we will be connecting with them to discuss that annual report more at length, in collaboration with the auditor's office as well. So those were kind of the dialogue from our meeting last week.
Any further comments or questions for Ms. Castle in governance? Okay. Ms. Myers, are we able to, or,
So the plan, so it's, the issue is it's not streaming, we're streaming on the council site, but not on the board and commission site right now.
okay,
And they're having issues with bringing, Mr. Constance up, so plan B is for them to send over a link via Teams, and then I'll pull them up on Teams.
okay. No problem. While we're waiting on that, I don't think we have anything from finance or HR, correct?
Correct.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead with my,
We were just waiting for the special service contract for clarification from finance.
okay. Well, hopefully I have that, but we got to wait for them to pull up. So let me give a couple of just announcements, if I could, for all board members. So I forwarded an email from HR about the harassment prevention training that we all need to do. So we all need to get that done by November the 20th. So we have a little over a month to get it completed. So if you didn't receive that email that I forwarded, just let me know, but I made sure I forwarded to CPOB. So let's please get that done as soon as possible, but at least by November the 20th. The other thing I wanted just to remind board members is our obligation not only to serve at board meetings, but we also have to serve on a committee. Every board member should be on a committee, and you can be even on 2 of them. Our 3 main committees that we have is governance, community engagement, and our review committee. HR and our finance are pretty much like ad hoc committees, right? HR is, a committee, obviously, when we need to do the review for the auditor, or if it's time for us to hire somebody or to do some type of a discipline. Finance, we know we want to continue to talk about that, but finance is when we need to turn in our budget But we should always be in conversations with Mr. Fricker of the city's finance group. So if board members can just either email me and let me know what committee you're going to be a part of, that will be great, because that's where most of the work that we have to do, that has to be done is in a committee. And that's our opportunity in the committee meetings, is to invite the community and the public into those committee meetings so they can see and be aware of what's happening going on. And so a lot of what, and I talked to Mr. Fennell about this, but even as he does his report outs, really all those things should go through committee first. Once the committee votes on all those things, then the committee chair will present that here. And then what we should be doing is voting on those things. Does that make sense to everybody? Most of our work gets done in committees. It shouldn't get done in the board meeting. That's why we have committees. So, but we need every board member a part of at least 1 to 2 committees, okay? Awesome. If you have any questions about it, let me know. If you know the committee you want to be a part of, like I said, just send me an email. That way I can send it to the chairs of those committees, all right? Any progress, Ms. Myers?
I think we're getting somewhere. I'm in the Zoom now, so now I'm just waiting for Mr. Fennell and Mr. Casas to come in, but it should be.
Did those turn off?
Yeah, I'll let yes, because I can see on here.
Okay. All right, well, this is the second meeting in a row, so I just already had a phone call about that. Hopefully there's somebody that can take care of that. So we're trying not to let that happen again. Ms. Anastasia, it's good to see you. Glad you're back.
Thank you.
Know you was vacationing for a long time. I wish I had your schedule.
One day you will.
You'll have it one day.
One day you will. One day everybody will. You're not gonna work forever.
While we're waiting, we do have someone that is celebrating a birthday today. So I don't know if there's any singers among us, but we do have one of our board members, Ms. Hawkins, celebrating the birthday today. We're excited for her and excited to wish her a happy birthday. As always, we're very thankful for all the community members that come out to our meetings and support this work.
Yes, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I didn't know your birthday was a week after mine.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
You
mine,
always find a way to get yourself in.
mine was on the 7th. Mine was last Tuesday.
Okay.
Uh-huh, yeah. I know, that's right.
Turned 55.
Did you?
Even Miss Hilton's?
Yes.
Miss Hilton, how are you? Good. We're waiting to try to get Mr. Fennell and Mr. Koss up on the screen. So we've done pretty much everything, just waiting for his report. Good to see you this evening.
You said the 3 main ones. You said community governance and what?
The review committee.
And review.
That's where Mr. Fennell pretty much does what he does here, and he goes through all of them and he reviews them. Doing that more at the committee level will help expedite as we do it here. And so now, at the committee level, we get to invite the community into those committee meetings to where, you know, they can ask questions, and it's a little bit more, less formal than what this is.
Okay,
so-
he usually does the review committee and governance all on the same day, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
And so we would need a chair. We got a chair for governance. Essentially, Keisha helps and leads our community engagement, but we still need a chair, a board member to chair it.
To chair review.
The chair, review, and community engagement.
Okay,
Yeah, now, Keisha's the big driver for community engagement, as well as Mr. Fennell's the driver for the review committee, but we still need a board member to assume the responsibility of the chair.
okay.
And so what I was saying, Ms. Elton, is that if we can have board members assign themselves to all the committees, the 3 main ones that we have is governance, community engagement, and the review committee, I think would be helpful. I think you would be great on the review committee, but that's just my thought. What do I know? But also, I would love if you would serve as chair for that committee, along with Mr. Fennell, just with your expertise and your background. It makes sense. Thank you, Ms. Elton. See how easy that was, board members? Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Hi, how are you? Good.
Can you say something, Anthony? Can you hear him? Yes. Okay. Good. We improvise. All right, we have Mr. Fennell on the mic. So, Mr. Fennell, we have the auditor's report, if you're ready to report out.
Let me get Mr. Costa back on. Just text him to get back on. Give me a second to get situated and hello everybody. Sorry about these technical difficulties. In your packet, you'll see our auditor's report submitted for the work that the auditor's office did over since our last meeting.
Can y'all hear?
Under this time, did 20 use of force reviews that we looked at. 16 of those I concurred with the findings. And there were 3 that I concurred with, but also had recommendations that I'll speak to in a moment, and 1 that I did not concur with. You'll notice there was like there's a drop in our normal numbers of reviews. Part of that is because I did finally take a week's vacation during our last time, much needed rest, and then I was sick with COVID, which I'm still getting over. So I just wanted to raise that point. But before I begin to speak towards the reviews that I had recommendations for, I want to give you an update on our case management development. We're still in the process of working through the contract with the vendor. I have a meeting scheduled for tomorrow with IT to discuss an issue that has come up within the contract process, and then also have a meeting scheduled with the law department to further engage in that conversation. So at this time, we don't have a contract signed with the vendor, and we're working through that problem. With respect to our data analysts, the contract has been signed. Our initial data that we have from 2022 through August of this year has been sent over to the analysts, and we've had a couple of meetings with her firm already, and we have another meeting scheduled on Monday as we work through the schema of how to break this data down and begin to see what the data tells us. So that process is working through nicely. On to the reports. Want to bring up first report is case number 2025-000-88595. And in this report, it involved officers responding to a report of a robbery where 2 juvenile black males were suspect. Description was provided, and when officers arrived at the location where the robbery was occurring, they noticed these 2 subjects which fled from the officers. 1 suspect was apprehended in the backyard of a residence, and during the apprehension, the officer used force to effect an arrest. The issue that came to hand was that there was a head strike that was used during the apprehension. There was also a transportation policy violation that the subject was transported without using a seatbelt, and an issue where the supervisor justified the transportation without seatbelt by overriding the policy mandates. So I will add that the head strike was in part by a reaction of the officer. Nonetheless, he still struck. He did a forearm strike and struck the young man in the head. But the young man came out of his hiding place and startled the officer. And so the officer did have an initial reaction to that. But I didn't believe the reaction was such that warranted still a head strike. It turns out that the incident was not a robbery, but was in fact a theft. But the officers had no way of knowing that until after they apprehended the subject and actually talked to the victim. But it was identified and logged as a robbery by dispatch. So I have the following recommendations. First is that CPOB and OIPA requested that the Akron Police Department initiate an investigation into the violation, the transportation violation by the officer, and take appropriate disciplinary action. And also the CPOB and OIPA requested APD initiate an investigation into the violation related to the transportation of the young man against the sergeant for failing to document and properly address the violation and take appropriate disciplinary action. There's also some policy and training recommendations that I've noted that require supervisors to formally document every policy deviation with remedial actions taken and prohibit subjective justifications for ignoring or modifying policy and practice. That is a recommendation I've made before related to similar transportation policy violations. And so this will be noted and placed in our recommendations file with the ongoing recommendations that I've been making with APD. The prohibitive intentional head strikes, which will go into the use of force review, de-escalation and procedural justice. So just to enhance and continue to enhance the training that officers receive there. There was slight delay in the activation of the body-worn camera of one of the officers. So again, emphasizing requiring that body-worn cameras be activated prior to engagement, and explore auto activation technology that's tied to weapons draws and vehicle exits. And then reaffirm the policy requirement amongst all officers as a training issue that all prisoners must be seatbelted with no exceptions, and establish an early intervention review for any use of head strikes. So at this time, I'll take any questions on this case.
Any questions for Mr. Fennell? Any comments?
Yeah, I got a question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Fennell, was it one officer on duty or more than one?
This was one officer with the head strike and the transportation violation. The sergeant was also listed in this because he failed to document, properly address it.
Thank you.
Mr. Fennell, I just wanted to be clear that the transportation violation, was that they did not secure the suspect in a seatbelt? Is that it? Was that it?
That is correct. That is correct. In his report, the sergeant referenced acknowledging the violation, but stated that the officer was driving slowly and carefully as he transported the young man, and that was how the sergeant justified failing to document and properly address the violation. The policy does not provide any kind of excuses or reasons for not following that policy. And as we all know, those of us that have driven or driven for quite a while, that it does not really matter how well we drive. It is the care and concern of others that are driving that creates a risk. So there is no exception to that policy.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, thank you.
All right, I'd like to make the motion to accept Mr. Fennell's report.
I second the motion.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Go ahead, Mr. Fennell.
All right, the next one is 2025-000-91845. And in this case, it involved Street Narcotics Uniform Detail or SNUD unit. They were conducting surveillance on a known drug location. Residence was occupied, based on their report, by two individuals that had been subject of prior narcotics investigations and arrests and drug trafficking. So during this surveillance, they saw what they believed to be a hand-to-hand drug transaction, and they began to follow a vehicle as it drove away from the residence. The officers stated the vehicle at some point failed to stop at a stop sign, so they initiated a traffic stop. The occupant of the vehicle stopped his vehicle, lowered his window slightly, but he did not present a physical driver's license to the officers. The officers asked if he had any firearms in the vehicle. He replied, "I do not have to answer that question." So they then instructed him to step out of the vehicle. He refused, and after repeated instructions to exit the vehicle, he continued to refuse, and the detectives eventually unlocked the door and began to remove him from the vehicle. He gave him one more opportunity to exit voluntarily, and when he stated he was not stepping out of the car, they removed him using joint locks and grappling with him and placed him on the ground. No additional force was used. So in this instance, that there was some concerns I have about the traffic stop. And the first is that there was no body worn or no evidence of an alleged stop sign violation. So the stop was based solely on subjective observations from the detectives, rather than an independently verifiable source or evidence. So it was not, I could not confirm the basis for the traffic stop. There are, and I've talked about this in previous instances of pretextual stops that are constitutionally valid if supported by a traffic violation. However, these are usually minor infractions in what are commonly called drug hotspots or areas of narcotic activity, and it raises concerns about selective enforcement and racial bias. And so that questions the legitimacy of the stop, especially when there's no video evidence to support or substantiate the infraction. The officers, the detectives, could have better supported their case by stating specific facts as to the individual's known drug trafficking status by providing additional information to support that. But without it, it also appears that the subject was stopped more by suspicion of past behavior than by clear present day violations. And there was no video documentation to support that. So got some recommendations that they require officers to document both the alleged traffic violation and independent corroboration for pretextual stops, and we began to monitor that information to see if there's a pattern or if there's any issues there. Mandate activation of body-worn camera and in-car camera to capture traffic violations so we have video accountability. And if unavailable, prohibit initiating stops absent urgent safety concerns. Adopt policies limiting use of minor infractions as pretext for narcotics enforcement unless supported by independent articulable suspicion. Require supervisors to be called when requested by citizens, because in this instance, the gentleman did request that a supervisor come to the scene, to which the sergeant that was on the scene replied, "I am a supervisor." And the request by the citizen was denied, as should not have been the case. A separate supervisor of equal or higher rank should have been called to the scene since the citizen had asked. There was a misunderstanding of the Ohio firearm disclosure laws, so there should be additional training for officers to understand that while Ohio allows for constitutional carry, that the law is clear on how an officer can go about requesting an individual show proof of being able to legally carry or produce a firearm. And so that's primary recommendations for that. The force used had no real issue with that, but there are some issues related to the pretextual stop that continue to pop up in reports. So with that, I have a concurrence with those recommendations. So I'll take any questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Hello, Mr. Fennell. I have a couple questions. The first question is, you indicated that the officers stated that this was a known drug suspect?
That was in the report. That language was in the report, yes.
Okay. Did they also make any mention of weapons being used in prior stops, since it was a known drug suspect?
No, that was not listed as any prior use of weapons or finding any weapons.
Okay, and my third question is, did the officer or officers provide a reason for not activating the body-worn camera?
These vehicles are not equipped with those cameras.
Okay.
Yeah, but these are the vehicles that they use, and repeatedly they will use like a minor traffic violation or equipment violation as the reason for a traffic stop, yet there's no independent documentation or video to support that.
Okay, and my last question, did either officer have a body-worn camera on their person?
Yes, some of the officers did have body-worn camera. I'm not exactly sure how many of them did, but they did have body-worn camera.
And was that camera activated?
Yes, we had activation on body-worn once they engage with the subject.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Fennell?
I just have one question. Mr. Fennell, did when the suspects were asked to have a supervisor come on scene, am I correct in that the officers refused to call a supervisor? And is that a police protocol that if a citizen asks for a supervisor that they have to send one? The officer that stated, "I am a supervisor," it
is a sergeant. So yes, he is a supervisor.
Oh, okay.
But the context of that question was to ask for additional supervisor to come to the scene. It was not, and I can't assume what the officer believed when he was asked that question, but to say I am a supervisor negates the intent of the request, which was to ask for a supervisor to arrive at the scene. There's no policy that states that a supervisor has to be called. It is normally that has happened, but I don't recall a specific policy that states that when asked, a supervisor has to be called to the scene.
Okay, okay, so they don't have to show up. If the person asks for a supervisor, one does not have to, the police on the scene do not have to ask for one.
I don't think it's a policy violation that directly states if asked that a supervisor has to come. If it's feasible, then yes, a supervisor should be called to the scene, but not to the extent where they'd have to call someone out if there's none available. If someone is available, they should call them to the scene.
Okay, and the fact that one officer was already a supervisor, that would have negated him having to call another supervisor in, like if he was a sergeant, then he would not have had to call in a lieutenant.
Well, no, it doesn't negate that, because as a sergeant, in theory, you would call a lieutenant, or you would call a captain, you would call someone higher in rank. But if you're working through a procedural justice mindset, if you're working through a community policing mindset, then and a de-escalation mindset, you would call a separate supervisor to the scene if for no other reason, even if it's not going to change the outcome the citizen has asked for. By not calling that supervisor, it just creates and escalates the situation.
Exactly. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from Mr. Fennell? All right, I'd like to make a motion to accept this report and get a second.
A second.
Second.
Second. My apologies, the first time I have to roll call vote this. Right? Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Krabs? Yes. Elton?
Yes.
Hawkins?
Yes.
Weems? Yes. Aniskevich?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. Motion passes. Sorry.
Thank you. The next one is 2025-00094-701. And in this instance, police were called to a CVS property because a person was there who was intoxicated, refusing to leave, being disruptive, and threatening staff and customers. Once officers got there, the staff asked that the person be trespassed, and the officer began to escort the person out of the business. Gave multiple opportunities for the person to leave voluntarily. He refused to leave and sat down, stating he needed to gather his belongings. At some point, the officer stated that the person was under arrest. When he went to place the person under arrest, an altercation ensued where the person pulled away, dropped to his knees, and the officers and the person went down to the ground as they tried to place him in handcuffs. During the struggle, an officer applied downward pressure to the subject's head and neck area. Another officer applied pressure to the base of his skull for pain compliance, and a bystander intervened and assisted the officers by holding the subject's legs while the officers handcuffed and searched, and while they placed the man in handcuffs. He was cleared by the medics at the scene and transported to Summit County Jail without any injuries. Issue at hand is the use of the downward head pressure and skull-based pain compliance. Both pose a significant risk of positional asphyxia and cervical injury. And these tactics are, especially on partially restrained individuals, can result in serious injury. And then also reliance on civilians to assist in restraining a subject introduces liability and safety risks and could potentially violate departmental policy of maintaining control of a subject. So the officers did use verbal commands, escort holds, takedowns, and ultimately pain compliance, but no strikes or weapons were used. And the supervisor did note the questionable effectiveness of the head and neck pain compliance and the importance of distinguishing between active and passive resistance. Ultimately, I concur with the use of force, but I do have recommendations. One is to ban the head and neck force, explicitly prohibit pressure to the skull neck as a pain compliance method due to the medical risk, and update the use of force policy to limit such tactics to deadly force situations. That this recommendation will be incorporated into the use of force review. On the de-escalation protocol, the officers could have extended their verbal engagement. They could have slowed down their encounter with the subject, especially with the understanding, knowing that he was intoxicated, and they could have called for maybe an additional unit before going hands-on. Prohibit the reliance on civilians to physically restrain subjects, and officers, must maintain exclusive control unless it's absolutely necessary or deadly force situation, and expand training on alternative control techniques such as team handcuffing, body positioning, leverage base holds rather than relying solely on pain compliance. And then during the supervisory review, have the supervisor ask questions or speak specifically to the opportunity to use less intrusive alternatives, and then clarify language in the use of force policy that distinguishes active resistance versus passive resistance and appropriate force options for each. So I'll take questions at this time for this case.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Fennell?
Was a bystander ever advised to disengage by the officers?
No, there was, I don't recall hearing any of that language in the videos, no.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll make a motion to approve report. Can I get a second?
Yes, I second the motion.
All right, we'll roll call vote. Anaskevich?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
Krabs? Elton? Hawkins?
Yes.
Weems? Boyd, yes. Motion passes.
All right, the last one. Use of force, 2025, 2025-001-00289. In this case, gentleman was observed by two officers as this gentleman was riding an ATV down a city street. The ATV, he was performing wheelies on the street, on the ATV, and it did not have headlights or taillights. The officers reported that, in their report, that the operation of the ATV appeared to be unsafe for road conditions. However, as the officers were sitting in a parking lot preparing a separate report while observing this, they did not immediately initiate a stop. They continued to work on their reports in this lot while this subject rode up and down the street on the ATV, and only proceeded to go towards the area where he was operating the ATV when they saw that he had stopped the ATV and he had turned it off. So as they approached the subject, they activated their overhead lights, began to exit their cruiser. The subject dismounted the ATV and took off running. It was a brief foot chase, probably 20 to 30 feet, and then the subject stopped and raised his hands. Now, as the officers got up to him, they took him to the ground and they performed a takedown and joint lock restraints. In their report, they stated that the subject had tensed up and then reached toward his waistband. The subject was handcuffed and ultimately charged with receiving stolen property. The ATV was listed as stolen. They charged him with resisting arrest, obstructing justice, and reckless operation. Now, the body-worn camera footage adds some critical context that was not reflected in the officer's written report. And that is that as he got off the ATV to take off running, his pants began to fall off his waist significantly. And he stopped and raised his hands. And when the police told him to stop running, he stopped. His hand movements toward his waistband were to hold his pants, but he also was wearing an insulin pump. And the subject stated that he was a type 1 diabetic. So while he was holding up his pants, he was also holding up the insulin device, was not reaching for a weapon. And the officers, when they approached him, they didn't give him any commands to place his hands behind his back or any other verbal commands before forcing him to the ground. And he had surrendered before being forced to the ground. Once he was on the ground, he was compliant and explained again that he had this medical device attached to his body. So he did not lay directly on the device. He did not lay directly on the pump. And while he was explaining that, the officers were still forcing him to the ground. So these observations, in my opinion, alter both the credibility and constitutional reasonableness of the officer's use of force decisions. So there was no question that of the stop. It was a nonviolent property offense and a traffic-related infraction. There were no weapons observed. His hands were visible, and he was communicating that he had a medical condition. And so, I feel like the takedown, while it was brief, it was unnecessary to achieve compliance. He had at that point had complied. His limited movement was due to his insulin pump, and it was a medical issue, not a defiant issue. And the recommendations that the use of force by this was deemed by the sergeant to be objectively reasonable. However, I find that the force used was not objectively reasonable under the Fourth Amendment once he surrendered, and that the use of physical control could have been avoided with clear communication. So I ask that the APD change the disposition of this use of force by these two officers from objectively reasonable to not objectively reasonable, and to take appropriate disciplinary action as warranted by disposition. Require reinforcement scenarios emphasizing verbal direction before physical force, particularly in partial compliance situations, and incorporate medical awareness, or when something is disclosed to them of a medical condition, into the use of force decision-making as they decide when to take someone to the ground or use physical force on them. Once adopt a policy mandating de-escalation once a fleeing subject stops or surrenders, limiting immediate takedowns unless a clear threat persists, and train officers to document both aggravating and mitigating factors, including environmental lighting, subject compliance, and medical explanations to ensure balanced reporting. And then amend the use of force policy that requires that officers issue a command such as place your hands behind your back before initiating a takedown when a suspect is stationary or surrendering. I might also add that the officers indicated in their report that the operation was reckless and endangering. However, the subject was riding on a side street that was not heavily traveled by vehicles or pedestrians. And there was sufficient lighting within that neighborhood because it was right next to a well-lit parking lot. So I'll take any questions or comments at this time.
Go ahead, Ms. Elton.
My first question is, was the insulin pump visible to the officers? Or was it concealed under clothing?
It was partially concealed, but became very visible when his pants came down. That was part of the reason why his pants, the weight of it was drawing his pants down. Now, on the video, from the body-worn video, I could not see the pump. I could see where his trousers were down, but the way he was facing, I could not see the pump. But he did let the officers know that because they questioned if that's a weapon. He said, "No, I'm type 1 diabetic. I have an insulin pump." And so by this point, they were taking him to the ground simultaneously, and they did not lessen their use of force once they were made aware and actually saw the insulin pump. One of the officers actually maneuvered it, and you could see it once he was on the ground and the officer's body was more over him and it was maneuvered. So, but initially, as they ran up on him, it was very difficult to see if he had the insulin pump through the body worn.
Okay, and you're saying after they observed that there was an insulin pump, their behavior didn't stop, it continued?
They continued to try to roll him. Typically, when a person is taken to the ground, they're placed on their stomach, hands are put behind their back. They continued to try to roll him onto his stomach and subsequently onto the insulin pump after he had identified it. Now I'm saying once he had surrendered, when he stopped running and put his one hand up, once he had surrendered, there was really no need to take him to the ground. But once he was on the ground, and even after they knew, they continued to struggle with him, and he was trying to not lay on the insulin pump while they were trying to force him onto it.
But the officers did not know, even with one hand to his waist, that it was an insulin pump prior to taking him to the ground. Is that correct?
I don't know if they knew or not. I know he did not say that until after he was after they had grabbed him and they were all going down. So I don't know if they saw it and just didn't know what it was, but once they knew, there was no change in their action. There was no change in their decision on how to apply force.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Fennell? All right. I'd like to make a motion to accept the report.
And I second the motion.
Roll call vote. Anaskevich?
Yes.
Castle?
Yes.
Krabs? Elton? Hawkins?
Yes.
Weems? Costa?
Yes.
Boyd, yes. Motion passes. Is that the whole of your report, Mr. Fennell?
Yes, the only other thing I would have is and it's in the packet where you can read are the list of recommendations during this time period that have been forwarded, that will be forwarded to APD for our continued discussions on policy and training recommendations.
Okay. All right, any further questions for Mr. Fennell or comments? If not, we'll move on to Mr. Costa and our finance report out.
No report at this time.
All righty. Do we need to? All right. Anything else for the good of the order, anybody?
Nope.
I do think we may need to go to executive session. We did interview a couple of candidates for executive assistant position. And I believe we'll need to discuss that in executive session.
All right, I'd like to make a motion going to executive session to discuss HR, employee matters.
Second.
Roll call vote, Anaskevich,
Yes?
Castle,
Yes.
Costa,
Yes.
Krabs, Elton, Hawkins.
Yes.
Weems, Boyd, yes. We are going into executive session.
Okay, you guys still hear us?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how we're gonna.
Yeah, how does,
She can sit out in the hallway.